Let's zone in on the market movements with Martin Smith from eNCA Capital. Martin, thank you so much for joining us. How did the markets react on the addition of 6 new countries to the BRICS bloc?
So, the markets didn't react too much to that. And obviously, it is significant news and it is very important. But markets are more about short to medium term things kind of happening. But if you look at what's happened from a BRICS perspective, it's more about planning and group dynamics and power dynamics for these countries over the next decade or two. So obviously important news and quite good news from a South Africa perspective, keeping us relevant from a global perspective. But from a market perspective, nothing really moving markets today.
So shareholders of Amsterdam-listed consumer internet giant Prosus approved a plan this week to put an end to a very complex cross-shareholding arrangement with its parent Naspers. Could you just break this down for us for a little bit?
Absolutely. So, this was kind of the final step in news that had been in the market for a few months now. And again, you mentioned the word complexity there, and that's exactly what it was. You had this complex structure of Naspers shares being held by Prosus and Prosus shares being held by Naspers. So this is just kind of taken that complexity away, which the market obviously liked at the time because the market hates complexity, and a lot more simple structure kind of going forward. Discount narrowed, share prices moved up. Again, that always happened retrospectively when the news initially came out. This is just kind of the final step, the formalization of that news.
So to the oil price, sitting at about $83 a barrel, still very high. Combine this with the weaker rand, and we'll probably have a fuel increase on the cards for next month. Yeah,
I completely agree with what you're saying. You're 100% correct. So you've got the two drivers around oil and the rand. So you're looking at probably around R1.30, R1.40 from a petrol price perspective, going upwards, and about R2.60 odd from a diesel perspective. So yes, we had a positive CPI number a couple of days ago, but that could likely put some kind of secondary pressures on inflation in South Africa. So it's one to keep an eye out when we're looking at CPI and potential interest rate hikes from here. But yeah, bad news, unfortunately, for South Africans coming up.
Martin, to the US, the Jackson Hole Symposium kicks off today with several international central bank officials in attending. What are you expecting from this annual meeting?
Yeah, sure. So, we've got ECB, the Fed, and the Bank of England that are going to be speaking there all around central bank policy. So I think the big news is probably going to be around the Fed. Powell speaks tomorrow, and what his rhetoric is around interest rates in the States and his outlook and those types of things. We probably won't get too much given away, but I think the message will be high interest rates for longer in the States, and that rhetoric is probably going to be echoed by the other members there. But again, I think the market's just looking for any sneak peek, any indication of what interest rates might do specifically out of the States. But I think, again, it's going to just be higher for longer.
Just a quick on this. If it's higher for longer in the US, can we here back home also expect higher for longer? Or could we possibly and hopefully expect another pause in the interest rate hikes next month?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think I think we always had 25 penciled in before the CPI number came out this week, which was obviously positive in a downward perspective. I think it's going to depend on what food prices do. You've got some weather potential issues in the background. You've got this oil price that might kind of push inflation a little higher. So I think very much like the States, I think it's going to be data dependent in terms of what the SARB is going to do. But for right now, it's looking like we are at least close to kind of peak cycle interest rate cycles in SA.
Let's look at some company news now. South23 and Blue Label Telecoms made announcements today. Can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So we had South23 come out with some numbers today. Earnings down somewhat on the back of commodity prices being lower, even though you had a nice pickup in volumes from the business, but ultimately ticking lower. And we've seen spot price earnings on those commodities that they have in their basket continue to go down from kind of where these results had them. So looking like earnings might trend a bit lower, so nothing getting me excited there. Same with Blue Label. Obviously, they had the Cell C acquisition and a lot of moving parts around that. So I think with that, I think we'll wait to see what the actual results look like in a couple of weeks/months. But again, nothing that's getting me particularly excited out of that business at the moment.
Thank you so much, Martin. That was Martin Smith from eNCA Capital. That's all.